I am going to go ahead and get started. I know others will join soon, but we are just a little past the hour. So I want to go ahead and give the introduction to our amazing speaker today. So I'm Carly Corlett. I am the Director of Population Health Consulting with GBS, and I'm really excited to introduce you to Becca Rick, maybe a familiar face to some. She was the former director here at GBS for Population Health Consulting. And today I'm excited to introduce her as my friend and former colleague. So Becca is an assistant professor and CMP director of sports nutrition with the Department of Nutrition and Integrative Physiology at the University of Utah. She is a registered dietitian and holds a board certification in sports nutrition. In addition to her faculty position, she provides nutrition coaching and testing services through Nutrition Mechanic, a private practice based out of Boulder, Colorado. So really excited for this specific topic today on Supplement Simplified. So with that, I will turn it over to Becca. And one note, we will be monitoring questions in the chat throughout. So feel free to engage and interact throughout. And then we'll either ask the question directly to Becca during the time the question is asked, or we'll hold off until the end if it makes most sense. So with that, I'll turn it over to Becca.
Thanks, Carly. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today. I'm really happy to be here. And as Carly said, I try to keep this as casual as possible. So they'll be looking at the chat. If you have things that you want to talk about, like you just came with burning questions, and you can go ahead and put those into the chat. And then if we don't get to those in my presentation, we'll cover them in the Q&A. And otherwise, just have time for questions at the end. I'll try not to be too long-winded so we have time for that. So what we're going to talk through today is really just like the basics of supplements. It's a pretty big topic, so I've tried to kind of simplify it as much as possible. I've chosen a few specific supplements that I wanted to talk about that are just common supplements, just from what I've looked at online in terms of how many people supplement these different products. So I'm going to talk through some of those in more detail. And then in general, just talking about how can you evaluate supplements for safety and efficacy. How can you make informed choices about the supplements that you may be considering taking, and then when to seek advice as well. Okay, so my big goals for today for you are really to just gain an appreciation for the industry that is around supplements, because yes, it is a big money-making industry. So proceed with caution sometimes, just knowing that. And then to also just hope to have you be able to explain how supplements are regulated, recognizing some of the benefits and risks of specific supplements, and then also in general, and then be able to identify questions to ask when you're considering supplementation. I'll go through a little decision tree, and then also equip you with just an approach for selecting safe supplements and some resources to do so. Just a few myths around supplements that I think might be common. First is natural means safe. So this isn't necessarily always true. Natural substances can still be harmful. They can include too high amounts of individual nutrients, or they could even interact with medications that you might be taking or other nutrients or supplements that you might be on as well and cause harmful side effects. The second myth is that more is better. This is almost never the case in life, and it certainly is true with supplements as well. So high doses of some supplements can actually be toxic. Some nutrients have what we call upper limits, a UL, and that means amounts exceeding that level have been shown to be toxic and harmful to the body. An example of this is with fat-soluble vitamins. So fat-soluble vitamins are like A, D, E, and K. Those are stored in the body, unlike water-soluble vitamins, more like vitamin C or B vitamins that are excreted when they're taken in high amounts. So fat-soluble vitamins have more associations with toxicity amounts. So we want to be careful with taking those in large doses. Another myth is that supplements are necessary, which is not always the case. Actually, most people with balanced diets don't really need to supplement unless they have specific deficiencies or an allergy or some kind of known condition that causes an imbalance in their body's ability to absorb the nutrients from food. The fourth myth that I have is that all supplements are proven effective. This is definitely not the case. Many supplements actually lack strong evidence for their claims. Um, there's only a few supplements that have been shown to be advantageous for health and or other indications like performance or recovery or sleep. So I'll talk through some of those, and some can be useful, but by and large, most supplements aren't needed or proven to be effective. Number, what is this? 5 is that brand doesn't matter. This isn't true just because there's something called third-party testing that I'm going to go through. And so certain brands will have third-party testing, which means that it's been tested to be safe and pure, meaning that what is in the bottle is what the label says. And not all supplements are third-party tested. Actually, most are not. So while sometimes the cheap option is just as good and fine, it's not always the case. So being really cautious on the brand and making sure that you're choosing products that have been third-party tested is critical. I think I have two more. So the next myth is that if it's on the shelf, it's safe because the FDA test and approve this. This is sadly not the case. The FDA actually doesn't approve supplements. They're regulated like food products and not like drugs. So the FDA doesn't have, the testing doesn't happen prior to the product being available and on the market. It only occurs if there are complaints about the product of harmful ingredients or situations that resulted in negative health consequences where the FDA kind of gets involved. And the last myth is that you don't need to inform your healthcare team of supplement use. This isn't true just because, kind of alluded to this earlier, but some supplements can be contraindicated with medications that you might be on for certain health conditions. They can interact with other nutrients. So this is important to always be talking about your healthcare team or your primary provider to make sure that they're aware of supplements that you're taking, and they can chime in and guide you on any kind of concerns that may exist with your specific health conditions, medications, supplement use. Okay, so now I'm going to jump into just the basics. I'll go over like the background of supplements. I'll go over the definitions, common supplements from there. Okay, so the first point I wanted to make, I was just kind of looking up online, how many people actually use supplements? And more than 70% of US adults report to use some type of supplement. Obviously, the supplement industry is large, so this can vary a lot in terms of what supplements people use, but the good majority of adults actually use supplements, at least one. And that's from the Council for Responsible Nutrition, is what that CRN stands for. 10 years prior, so it really is on the rise. The report from 10-year prior period showed like 40 to 50% US adults using supplements. So it's increasing, as is the industry around it. It is a multi-billion dollar industry. I saw that about 65 million Nope, billion, $65 billion industry in the US alone in last year. So that was a 2024 report. And that's actually expected to more than double in the next 10 years. So booming industry, lots of attractive like qualities for companies to invest in, which also makes sense to like proceed with caution because it is an industry. And then I thought it'd be interesting to just include like, why do people supplement? So from a similar survey in 2016, the three main reasons that people claim to be test or using supplements for included just overall health and wellness, to get energy, and then third, to fill nutrient gaps in their diets. Maybe you can relate, maybe you have a different reason for supplementing, but I would always be curious. If you want to share why you supplement and what you supplement in the chat, then that would be fun. So the definition of a supplement is from the FDA. This was defined in 2017, was the most recent updated version of the definition. It's a dietary supplement, or a dietary supplement is a product intended for ingestion that contains a dietary ingredient intended to add further nutritional value to supplement the diet. I've bolded supplement because there's a big emphasis on that, right? These products are not meant to replace food sources of specific nutrients. They really should be used with that in mind. So really to supplement is the focus there. Um, these are the major types of dietary supplements. First is vitamins and minerals. That's what we're mostly going to see. We'll talk through some of these, like a multivitamin, vitamin D. These are the most common types of dietary supplements. Major nutrients, so something like a protein powder, that would be also considered a supplement, or omega-3 fatty acids, that's going to represent fat, which is a major nutrient. Botanicals and herbs. So botanicals are like compounds that are extracted from foods, and herbs can be something like ginseng that might be used for immunity, or turmeric for inflammation. Those would be examples of herbal supplements. And then another major category would be probiotics. Probably familiar with these. These are live microorganisms, and they're known to have healthy bacteria to support gut health and immune function, even brain health, other benefits throughout the body. And then I put other on here as well. Other supplements, especially like in my world, would be more ergogenic aids, which is just a performance enhancing category of supplements. So that would be more specific to a performance benefit or recovery benefit. Another category that I have seen increase in popularity is something called adaptogens. This is also kind of an herbal supplement, but it includes mostly like herbs or mushrooms, and they're believed to help regulate the body's stress response. An example of this is ashwagandha. I see that more routinely in my own work, and that is meant to help help support sleep and relieve stress. So maybe you're familiar with some of those. Those are just the primary categories, and we'll talk through some specifics in later slides. I kind of talked about this in the myths section, but I really wanted to highlight the regulation around supplements. So unlike drugs, supplements don't require FDA approval before they hit the market. They're classified as a subcategory of food, and so manufacturers don't have to provide evidence of product safety and efficacy. Um, and contrary to that, medications and drugs are really regulated by rigid pharmaceutical rules, and they're based on pre-marketing authorization and product control. And dietary supplements are not required to obtain approval from the FDA before marketing their products. So this actually just poses kind of a significant risk to the health of the general public. Supplements have to be shown to have some kind of harmful effect for the FDA to kind of step in, and their resources are limited. So it's kind of tricky for them to have a lot of oversight until it becomes critical. And who wants to be that person that had that critical situation happen? Okay. Now I'm going to talk through a few different common supplements. Hopefully this is helpful to you. Maybe they're ones that you're more familiar with or could be even potentially taking or considering taking. The most common supplements currently used by US adults are the ones I've listed here, so that's what I'm going to talk through. So vitamin D, about 70% supplement with this. Magnesium, 60%. That's higher than I would have guessed. Omega-3 fatty acids, nearly 50%. And multivitamins, 40, and then vitamin C, 36. Those were the top five, so I'm focusing on those. Other supplements that I see common are calcium, probiotics, greens, like the green powders, athletic greens. Not that I want to plug for them because I don't, but that's a common one that you may have seen. It's advertised on like every single podcast out there. And creatine has gained in popularity for good reason. So I'm going to talk about that one. Zinc and collagen. I'm not talking through all of those, but if you have questions on them, I'm happy to try to address them at the end. Okay, so vitamin D is our first kind of zoom in supplement that I'm going to look at. And I'm kind of following the same format for all of those five and then a couple additional. So what I've done here is just talk through like the benefits, food sources, and whether or not you need a supplement. And at the top is just the RDA, which is the recommended dietary intake for this specific nutrient. Not all have them, but vitamin D does. And they're always in different units, which can be frustrating to understand. But 600 international units per day is the recommendation for adults. With most nutrients, including vitamin D, you'll see higher or lower amounts needed for different age groups like children, aging adults, breastfeeding, pregnancy. Those situations generally increase needs for nutrients, but just to keep it simple, I've included most of the recommendation is just for healthy US adults. And I say US because the standards are just based nationally. The benefits of vitamin D are vast. So it does play a critical role in bone health by regulating calcium absorption. But research is really interesting and compelling in the role of vitamin D throughout the body and in different systems. There's actually vitamin D receptors found on almost all, if not all, cells throughout the body. So we're just learning about like, okay, there's probably a role for vitamin D signaling. It often functions as a hormone throughout the body. We know about a lot of the benefits on musculo health or muscular health and brain health, the heart as well. So broad benefits, and it's worth pointing out because, and maybe I should have included this, deficiency is quite common for vitamin D. In part because the dietary sources for vitamin D are pretty limited and really not adequate for achieving the levels that we need. So you're mostly going to see it in products that are fortified with vitamin D, like milks or milk alternatives, yogurt, egg yolks contains a little bit of vitamin D, fatty fish does as well, and certain mushrooms also have some vitamin D just from sun exposure. And so our biggest source of vitamin D is the sun, as we all probably know. It's the sunshine vitamin. And the issue here is that if you live above 35 latitude, which most of the US is above that, I'm based in Utah, I'm giving this. And so we're definitely above that latitude. And if you live above that, you are at risk for vitamin D deficiency just because of the way that the UV rays hit. So particularly in winter months, it probably we're not able to get enough from food. It makes sense to supplement during that time. And then other issues also make it hard for our bodies to absorb vitamin D through sunlight. Things like wearing clothing that blocks it or even sunscreen. It doesn't take that long of sun exposure to get the vitamin D. Like your body is great at really absorbing the amount that it needs. It's just a few minutes during kind of peak sunlight hours, like 10 to 2 window is what I generally think about. But you have to have large body parts exposed without sunscreen during that time. So you're gonna have to like pick your poison there, which is why supplements are often commonly recommended. Like I said, particularly in the winter time, vitamin D supplement is recommended, but there is an upper limit on vitamin D. You can have toxic amounts. So it's best to get blood work and just to ask your doctor to include a vitamin D panel when you get like an annual physical, just to see what your levels are and then to supplement accordingly. Another reason that getting the blood work is really helpful for vitamin D is that I often see levels be very, very low, in which case like 1,000 or 2,000 IUs per day is not even going to help bring you up into like a sufficient amount, much less optimal levels of vitamin D in your blood. So in those cases, we can supplement pretty high levels of vitamin D, which we wouldn't want to do if somebody was in an adequate amount. So getting that tested so that the supplement can be really specific to your own needs is really helpful if you have the opportunity. If not, this is one that I would say, yeah, at least in the winter, probably doesn't hurt to supplement 1 or 2 grams or 1,000 to 2,000 IUs a day. That upper limit, you'd have to supplement, I think it's like definitely over 4,000, and it could be higher than that to start seeing levels of toxicity. And that'd have to be like a long-term thing. Okay, next up is magnesium. So I have seen this grow in popularity, but I was pretty surprised that this was the second most popular or commonly supplemented nutrient. Um, the recommendation per day is 300 to 400 milligrams. That range is based on males and females. So females need a little less, more in that 300 range, and guys or males need closer to 400. The functions or the benefits of magnesium, it really depends kind of too on the type, but it has multiple functions throughout the body. It's critical for muscle and nerve function and signaling. So it's used in all of those signaling processes. And it can support digestion. So if even thinking about like a common laxative, including magnesium, like milk of magnesium. And then it can also aid sleep and relaxation. So I see it mostly supplemented for sleep health at this point. And dietary sources are pretty vast with magnesium. You have things like dark chocolate, avocado, legumes, beans, nuts, and seeds, whole grains. So it does cross a lot of different food categories, and can mostly be achieved through just eating a balanced, varied diet. When it comes to a need for supplement with this, I would just say if deficient. So again, like getting blood work because it's not one that would just be recommended for a blanket supplement. There's also some caution with other nutrients. So it does compete with absorption um, in the gut with calcium. So if you're taking calcium, you want to spread that out with magnesium because they use the same absorption channels and can interfere with each other. Same thing with zinc. So it would be not recommended to supplement unless you need it or you need a targeted benefit. There's some different types. So magnesium threonate is one that is more associated with benefits around sleep health and migraines and cognitive function. The type glycinate, magnesium glycinate, is most commonly used for best or optimal absorption in the gut and reducing GI symptoms that can be associated with supplementing. And then the form magnesium citrate can be used to help with constipation. And splitting the doses is also recommended if you are supplementing. The next one I wanted to discuss is omega-3s. So you might know this as an essential fatty acid. So that just means essential fatty acid means when we hear the word essential, we have to get it through the diet. Our bodies can't make it enough of it on their own. So essential fatty acids include omega-6s and they include omega-3s. Why we have so much hype around omega-3s or where we hear these talked about more is that they're not as commonly consumed in our diet. And so increasing the levels of omega-3s is worth discussing because we generally have a pretty low amount of omega-3s. It's not to say that omega-6s are bad, they are not. So when you hear about like seed oils are bad, this isn't true. It's just the fact that we typically get more, the ratio of omega-6s to omega-3s is too high in the diet. So we can change that by just increasing the amount of omega-3s that we get. Um, the benefits around omega-3s are also pretty broad. So it supports brain health, fights inflammation, reduces sickness, improves heart health. They can be prescribed or recommended by healthcare providers for all of these benefits. Even things like eye health too. I didn't even include that, but it can address dry eye. So there is a lot of different benefits to omega-3s. Um, the specific dietary sources are mostly going to be from fatty fish. So this is going to include like salmon, mackerel, sardines. Fatty fish is the primary source of omega-3 fatty acids. Nuts and seeds also do contain omega-3s. Not to get like too sciencey on the terms, but they contain an omega-3 called ALA. And there is a very low conversion of plant-based sources of omega-3s to the types of omega-3s. EPA and DHA are the ones that we really want to focus on. And there's a low conversion of ALA to those forms. So essentially, it's kind of not enough to get. So if you're only having plant-based sources, probably a supplement isn't going to be a bad idea. Sometimes you also see fortified foods being fortified with omega-3s. So I'll see that in like dairy products. Sometimes you'll see like a milk with DHA fortified. Um, and that would be kind of common as well. Yogurt is also sometimes fortified. So the need for supplement, um, possibly. There is a test that you can take. Maybe they have something at the doctor, but most recently, I'm familiar with this company called Omega Quant. I got their test, and it shows you the percentage of omega-3s in your blood, and it's pretty cool. It breaks it all down. And I think their reports are like something like over 90% of adults worldwide don't have the levels of omega-3s that would be recommended to achieve all of these health benefits. So it is one that like it's definitely worth a conversation around. If you're not eating fatty fish like a few times a week, a supplement could be useful. And it's usually like 1 to 2 grams per day with a focus on EPA and DHA, as that's the type that we're really trying to increase. Hopefully that wasn't too in the weeds, but an interesting supplement nonetheless. Okay, this one's simpler. Multivitamin. We probably hear about this one a lot. And this can actually contain a lot of different things because it's a multivitamin. It's pretty general, broad category. They generally include B vitamins, A, C, D, E, and K. They can also include, it's always called a multivitamin, but they include minerals generally as well. So calcium, magnesium, zinc, iron, potassium, sometimes herbal products as well. They're often targeted to like special groups like kids or prenatal vitamins, different populations that have specific needs, and those formulas are usually tailored to those special groups. The benefit of taking a multivitamin would be really just to correct a known or expected deficiency. So if you don't have a known or expected deficiency, probably not recommended to take this, or maybe it's just kind of a waste. Um, Most common vitamins and minerals that we have inadequate intakes of include iron, vitamin D, potassium, and calcium. So if you know or expect that you're not getting enough of those specific nutrients, maybe those are individual nutrients that you could supplement, but in general, a multivitamin isn't usually needed. Um, Dietary sources are broad because multivitamins contain a lot of different specific vitamins and minerals. But if you have a non-restrictive diet, meaning you don't exclude food groups, um, and you focus on getting a variety of whole foods, fruits, and vegetables, probably covered here. So to wrap that up, the need for supplement is unlikely with a multivitamin. All right, next up is vitamin C. The recommended range is 75 for females, 90 milligrams per day for males. You have higher needs with breastfeeding and pregnancy, and if you smoke, there is kind of a significantly higher need for vitamin C. It's like 125 milligrams a day. The upper limit, there is an upper limit for vitamin C at 2000. And I point this out because I see like people supplementing with really high doses of vitamin C and it's just not needed. Your body can mostly excrete it, but it does cause like stomach upset, nausea, and vomiting if you have too much of this. The benefits of vitamin C. So vitamin C functions as an antioxidant, and what that means is it fights oxidative stress in the body. So oxidative stress can be triggered by just regular metabolism, things like exposure to pollutants or harmful products, exercise. These are all like triggering oxidative stress. And our body has a natural response to adapt to that stress, and we want our body to adapt naturally. So when we have too many antioxidants, including vitamin C, vitamin E is another common one. This actually harms our body's natural ability to fight oxidative stress. So I don't generally recommend supplementing with this. It's just pretty much adequate to get through. Fruits and vegetables are the best source. So things like citrus fruits, Oranges, lemons, limes, grapefruit. Those are great sources of vitamin C. Berries, bell peppers, tomatoes. It's pretty broadly found in fruits and vegetables. And the need for supplement, as I said, is unlikely. I wanted to address the indication for colds because vitamin C is commonly taken to prevent a cold, and it doesn't actually prevent colds. It can reduce the duration of a cold, but that would require that you would be kind of taking it, entering into a cold, and then after, like throughout the duration of having a cold, to just reduce the duration of it, but it's not going to prevent a cold. The category of probiotics is another fun one. So probiotics support gut health. It's these live microorganisms that are known as like healthy bacteria or the good gut bacteria. And it also has a role in improving brain health. Um, Dietary sources of probiotics to get the benefits of supporting a really strong gut and that like good gut flora is going to really require that you get food sources most days. So, trying to incorporate fermented foods are going to be the best um, source of probiotics. So, things like yogurt, kefir is like a yogurt-based drink. Miso, like miso soup. Miso has probiotics. Kimchi and kombucha, tempeh. Tempeh is like a fermented tofu. I actually like it. The taste much better. These are all great options to incorporate into your diet, and this is going to support gut health. The need for supplement with probiotics is pretty tricky because it's really based on the specific strain. So taking a general probiotic is not really shown to be helpful with your health, but there is a lot of research on specific indications for very that specific strains of probiotics can help. So an example of this is with irritable bowel syndrome, IBS. There are specific types of like, okay, what are the symptoms of IBS that you experience? And there are strains that you can take and that have been identified to really help relieve symptoms of IBS. So that's like one example of a situation where if I was working with somebody with IBS and they were experiencing any kind of number of symptoms, whether it's constipation, diarrhea, whatever, I there's a site actually called ibsprobiotics.org I came across in like the last year, and it's really helpful because it'll show you the very specific strain. So when you're actually getting a probiotic that is worth the while and targeted to the situation in which you're taking it for, generally speaking, they're pretty pricey, but at least you know that it's going to have an impact rather than just taking a broad probiotic just for general health. I wouldn't really recommend that. Another time where probiotics can be useful is if you are on antibiotics or just came off antibiotics. That can be really helpful just to help build up the good bacteria in your gut because antibiotics are kind of clearing out everything, good and bad. So taking a probiotic during a time like that can be indicated. I wanted to talk about creatine because it's just popular, at least in my world, but I feel like I've heard more and more about creatine just in the general public for health, not even inside of like the athletic realm. So I thought we could chat about it for a minute. The benefits of creatine, most of research historically has been around athletic improvements with like strength and power and helping increase lean mass. But there has been a growing body of research to support general health benefits of creatine as well. So, with brain health, there's some great research around improving cognition, specifically in older adults, and memory. The brain benefits probably require a higher dose than what would be generally recommended as like a daily kind of amount. But there's a lot of promise with that. It also can be helpful, like some research has shown, even just a single dose of creatine to be useful in sleep deprivation. So that's something else that's kind of cool. If you are like a new mom or doing some kind of event where you're just not getting enough sleep, maybe this is like something that you could use just to help yourself with cognition in intermediate kind of ways like that. Sources of creatine are mostly meat-based products because it's stored in muscle. So you're going to see it in meat-based products. You'll also see it in seafood. We are able to make creatine through our bodies. There's like a natural turnover every day of about 1 to 3 grams. Um, but it's not the amount that we need to maintain like optimal storage. So getting some in the diet is important. And the reality is you'd have to eat like a lot of meat, like pounds of meat every day to get that amount that we've seen to be connected with health benefits. So this is something that's like, yeah, this is probably a good supplement. There's not been research to show harm with supplementing, so it's one that I often do recommend as just kind of like, this isn't going to hurt. We know we can't usually get enough in the diet, and it has a lot of promising benefits. Dosage wise, it's like 5 grams a day for most people would be covering that. And it's a relatively cheap supplement. Okay, I'm going to talk about evaluating supplements, and I'm going to try to just keep speeding myself up here so we do have time for questions. Um, okay, so when it comes to evaluating supplements, I have 3 different companies here that are third-party testing companies, and they're just certifying that the products are safe. So looking at the ingredients and the dose contained in the specific product, and they're looking at purity. So this just means what is on the label is actually what's found in the product. Um, to get third-party tested is quite expensive. So this is why oftentimes you'll see brands that have third-party testing, they may be more expensive products because they have to pay to get this testing done. But it's really rigorous type of testing, and it's going to be peace of mind. So if you're going to be taking a supplement, I really do recommend going with a brand and a product that has been third-party tested, and it will have one of these labels on it. So it's NSF, Informed Choice, or USP, which stands for US Pharmacopoeia. Okay. They don't prove their effectiveness. That's not what the third-party testing is for. So they're not, just because it's been third-party tested doesn't mean it's going to elicit a benefit for you. It's just going to show that it's safe and pure. This is just an example of an app. So NSF, this is certified for sport, and it's often recommended for athletes. If you have youth athletes that are in your house, or you yourself are subject to any kind of testing, drug testing, or anti-doping regulations, this is really important to be checking. But like I said, the third-party testing is recommended for anyone, not just athletes, just because who wants to be taking a product that can be contaminated? And that is really very common. So I still recommend, even though it looks like it's geared toward athletes, if it's safe for athletes, then it's probably safe for you too, because athletes are subject to such high standards for anti-doping regulations. So I still think it's great for the just general public to use something like this. And it's an example of an app. The others have apps as well. So Informed Choice. I have a resources slide at the end that you can look up different products as well. But this just allows you to scan a barcode, look up products, compare them, see what they're good for, and if they have been tested. Okay, so when is a supplement worth it? I always just like, let's take a step back and consider the cost benefit analysis here. So the cost would include like the actual finances, like the sticker price that you're paying. Some supplements, like these green powders, are just super pricey. You want to think about like what does this investment look like for me? What are the potential side effects? That's also a cost to you. Interactions with medications. What's the risk of contaminated products? Contaminated products are really commonly found in like a pre-workout type of drink or supplement. So that would be something to be like really considering. Benefits of supplements could be just potential health or performance advantage that you can't achieve through food alone. So when you're thinking about just like questions to ask, what's your motivation? Did somebody tell you about the supplement? Did you see it online through an influencer? Did someone on your healthcare team recommend this to you? What are your goals from taking the supplement? So, going back to the cost benefit, like, do you have a known deficiency? Are you looking to improve your health in some specific way? And then what does the evidence say? So, an example is in sport nutrition, we actually have like a grade, an international ranking of like A, B, C, D in terms of how um, where the evidence supports different types of supplements. And there's like 5 or 6 supplements that make that A category of like, yeah, this has a known benefit. 5 or 6 out of like hundreds of supplements out there. So, more than likely, a supplement that you come across is probably not going to be advantageous. So really look to see like what the evidence says. And then what products have been third-party tested, as we just talked about. So when you're choosing a supplement, just a couple of slides here on recommendations for how to go about this, and who would benefit. I like to say food first, but not food only. Who can benefit? So when a nutrition deficiency is known or expected, this was covered earlier, but really examples of this would be if you have a food allergy. So someone with celiac disease can't consume products with gluten. Oftentimes products with gluten are fortified with B vitamins. Like there's some just indications there that you might consider certain supplements. If you have dietary restrictions, if you follow a vegan or vegetarian food pattern, this would be something that you would look at for a potential deficiency in calcium, vitamin D, B12, iron, zinc, iodine, and others. And then also, if you're looking for a specific health or performance benefit that's just not realistic with food alone, some of the examples that we talked through on the specific supplements were just like, yeah, it's hard for us to get these through food alone, so it might be worth considering. Vitamin D, omega-3s, probiotics, and creatine fall into that category. This is a very kind of extensive decision tree. And I really wanted to include it just to kind of show like really it's tedious, but if it feels too onerous to kind of think through all of these questions with the supplement, then I would just challenge you to think about if it's even worth taking the supplement because these are products that we're putting into our body. It's really worth understanding what is the purpose we're trying to derive from taking this product, and is it even safe to do so? Is it effective? Does it check all those boxes? So I won't go through this in detail, but essentially, and I'll send these slides if you want to look at it and follow up. Like, can we get this in our diet? Do we have the blood work? Is the supplement effective for addressing a deficiency? Is it safe? Do we have a reliable source? If you can answer yes to like all of these questions, then maybe consider a trial use. That's generally the decision-making process. So we're always going to be looking for like food first, but not food always or only. This is an example of something that I would look at like for a specific supplement. So using vitamin D here, looking at, okay, is this person limited to in their sun exposure? And if you say no, then no need to supplement. If you say yes, then you start asking additional questions. Is testing available? If testing is available, do they have inadequate or insufficient amounts? And then you might start to look for a supplement from, as we talked about, a reputable company with third-party testing. Okay, so considerations for supplements, kind of reiterating some of this, but dosage is important just to understand how much that you need. That's going to be guided by your individual situation, likely blood work in many situations, or just looking at the diet and seeing what you're missing. And then thinking about brand, making sure that you're finding a third-party tested product. Timing is important. There are certain nutrients that are better absorbed on an empty stomach, like iron is an example of that, and others that need to be absorbed with food, like fat-soluble vitamins, require that you take them with a fat source to be able to be absorbed. So vitamin D is an example of that you want to make sure you're taking vitamin D with a major meal that's containing a decent amount of fat. And then inhibitors and enhancers are also something to consider. And this is where it can be helpful to work with a healthcare team. And then just also be using the resources that I have at the end of this to see what you need to know with the specific supplements that you're taking. So some nutrients inhibit the absorption of a supplement that you might be taking. Examples of this are something called phytates that bind iron, and they're often contained within plant-based sources of iron. So the body has a hard time absorbing iron. Um, Another example is oxalates that are found in a lot of different vegetables. They bind calcium. So that can also be an issue if you're combining those food sources and taking a calcium supplement, you're not going to absorb much of it. Examples of enhancers, something like vitamin C is usually recommended with iron because it helps the absorption. Vitamin C is also recommended with collagen as well to help the absorption, or vitamin K with vitamin D. So there are some different, that's like not comprehensive what I just mentioned as examples, but there are different nutrients and products that inhibit or enhance the absorption that you'll just want to be aware of when you are looking at taking a supplement. And then, kind of lastly, when you want to seek professional advice, absolutely when you're considering a new supplement, just like I was mentioning through those different, like, okay, there's inhibitors and enhancers and drug medication interactions. And so having some professional support and navigating that can be really useful. If you have a known or expected health condition, that's worth exploring different supplements with your healthcare providers to see what could be helpful, and then also make sure you're avoiding any supplements that might be harmful to the management of that condition. And then if you're taking medications or other supplements, definitely want to talk through that with a professional. This is my list of resources. So there are a few, when we were on that third-party testing slide, NSF, Informed Choice, and US Pharmacopoeia are three third-party testing agencies. So you could check those out to see if a supplement that you're taking or considering taking is third-party tested. And then for education, the NIH Office of Dietary Supplements can be useful. They have so many different educational tools, like anything from a little supplements handout to research that you can search recommendations, that sort of thing. Council for Responsible Nutrition. Also, this is like a leading trade association that represents supplement manufacturers, ingredient suppliers. They have a ton of resources also that face the public. And then examine.com is the largest database of nutrition and supplement research that you could find on the internet. And their researchers analyze evidence in nutrition sciences, including with specific supplements, and then they provide education on their findings. So hopefully those are helpful resources in helping you navigate the world of supplements. In wrap up, I encourage you to think about what surprised you. Maybe what did you learn? What are you going to do with some of this information? Is there anything you can take away from this? And with that, we can open for questions.
Thank you so much, Becca. That was very informative, and I'm sure so many people were able to gather a lot of information that they didn't know, or maybe have some answers to some questions that they had previously. So we do have a few questions that I'd love for you to chime in on. One individual chimed in because their doctor wanting them to take let's see, vitamin D is drastically low. Can you remind me if 2000 IU daily should be enough to increase levels?
Um, Typically, no. It depends on the response. So, if it's drastically low, I don't know what the level is, but we see supplements literally in over 10,000 IUs for short periods to correct a deficiency. So you would probably be fine with at least 5,000. Um, in the summer months, if you can do sun exposure, that'll help boost your levels as well. But it's unlikely that you're going to see any kind of toxicity if you're taking like 5,000 daily or even 10,000 for a short period of time and then getting a retest.
Okay, thank you. A more general question, do you have recommendations on a good multivitamin?
A good multivitamin. I don't know that I have a good recommendation on this because like I said, I don't often, I don't know if I've ever recommended a multivitamin to someone. Um, because it's unlikely that there are just like so many interactions that the vitamins and minerals included in a multivitamin might have with each other. So I would really be more interested in like what nutrients are you lacking in your diet
Mhm.
and trying to supplement that specific nutrient rather than a multivitamin. I also often feel like multivitamins give this like false sense of security because it's like, oh, I'm taking a multivitamin. I don't need to like also eat a well-rounded diet. So in general, multivitamins aren't necessarily recommended, but if you are looking for a multivitamin, I would look to see if you can find on one of those sites, just search like multivitamin and see what's third-party tested if you know that you do need a multivitamin. And then that could be maybe helpful. Products, in general, I don't know that they have multivitamins. I would imagine that they do because supplement products that I often will use as my go-tos would be like Thorne or Douglas Labs, Clean Athlete. So I would maybe check there to see if they have a good multi as well.
Great. Thank you. Um, let's see here. I'm gonna kind of bounce around, just being mindful of time. A good question, and I think this is a common theme right now, are powders. What about protein powders? Any thoughts, insight on protein powders just generally?
Yeah, I did like have so many things I wanted to include in slides, and then I had to just be like more particular in what we had time for. But with protein powders, they can be used like in situations. So just like with any other supplement, I wouldn't like keep in mind this should supplement the diet and not replace. But if you're in a situation where you're like crunched for time or you're on the go or it's like kind of post workout and you know that you need to start the process of rebuilding your muscle, those are situations in which a protein powder can just be really helpful because it's convenient. In that case, having something with like generally the range that you're going to be looking for is 20 to 30 grams of protein, a complete protein. So like whey products are going to be best absorbed and you're going to get the most value from that. If you are plant-based, then having soy is the best, most complete protein for a plant-based diet. And then you want to make sure it includes like 2 to 3 grams of leucine. So that is one of the essential amino acids that we can't um, make in the body. So it's important to include that because that helps stimulate muscle protein synthesis, which is typically the purpose of taking a protein powder. Um, Hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you. One question, is there a good supplement to increase energy?
Mm. Um, that's a broad question. Typically, if somebody's looking to increase energy, I'd be looking at like food. Are you getting enough food? Are you eating frequently enough? Are you getting a good balance of like protein with vegetables and fiber? Because that's going to be your best bet to support energy. Also, like getting adequate sleep, which you probably know, and that's like it's just not an easy button with the supplement to increase energy. The best supplement to increase energy that has great research is caffeine. So that can be really useful, but obviously we want to limit that like later in the day and oftentimes with that like energy dip that we see in the afternoons often can be addressed with like a good well-rounded snack. So if you're getting that like kind of lull in the afternoon and you want to avoid caffeine, then maybe try something with like, at least 10 grams of protein, a vegetable or a fruit paired with that is going to help your energy. Energy like pre-workout supplements generally are like the energy drinks have the most likelihood of being contaminated. So I would try to avoid those if you can. And if you're feeling low on energy and you think you do have a pretty well-rounded diet and you get enough sleep, then getting blood work to see if you're deficient in something like iron or B12. Those are two common deficiencies associated with low energy.
Um, Going back to your comment on creatine and everything, one individual had asked if does creatine still have the you need to chug water with it, or can you take it without too much change in your normal water slash food consumption?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So no need to consume it with water. It'll dissolve in water if that's how you prefer to take it. You can put it into a smoothie. If you do a protein drink, it's easy to just add in there. The amount is like about 5 grams. If you buy creatine supplement, it'll come with a little scooper that is 5 grams. That's kind of always what I've seen. And it's a small amount. So that can just be mixed in whatever. Creatine is held with water in the body. So it can result in like a couple pounds of weight gain that is just water weight. It's not harmful, but most people don't notice that if they just kind of increase their stores over time, which is just that 5 gram dose. If you were to do like a loading protocol, then that's more associated with weight gain because you're taking a large volume for a few weeks. But if you were just looking for general benefits of it and you don't have like an upcoming event where you really need high levels of creatine, then just doing that 5 grams a day is generally recommended. If you're looking for those cognitive benefits, research is showing like closer to 10 grams is the recommended amount for that.
Awesome. And I think we have time for one more question. One individual indicated that they struggle with correct information from their care providers. Family doctor does not agree with my functional medicine nutritionist. Is there a good slash best resource for me to use to get objective info on supplements? I find social media is very convincing, but I listen with caution.
Yeah, that's a good question. In terms of like social media, I wish I would have included some good accounts to follow. I always look at sports dietitians that have that certification, like that CSSD, Certified Specialist in Sports Dietetics. They'll oftentimes, like people will do awesome education on supplements online. And if they have that credential, then I feel like I can trust it more and making sure that information that you're looking at on social media, do they include references? If there's not references included in the statements, then I would be cautious about believing what you're seeing. And then those sites that I listed, examine.com is a great consumer, like public facing website that you can find a lot of information on supplements. Um, and then the NIH Office for Supplements, that one is good too. You can just Google that. And then the Council for Responsible Nutrition. So those are all like consumer facing resources on specific supplements. And if you're seeing a supplement online, like on social media, and then you do digging and you can't find any evidence to support it, then I would assume that it's not advantageous, or at least we're not at the point in research now where it could be worth taking.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Becca, for your time. This was such a beneficial presentation today. For everybody who's sitting on, if you hopped on late, just know that we will be sending the recording. And then at the end of the recording, again, Becca referenced all those awesome resources for you to dive in if you have specific questions about a certain supplement, or to Becca's point about different social media trends and supplements. So that could be a great option as well. If you have any additional questions that we weren't able to get to today, please email our wellness email, which is wellness@gbsbenefits.com. And again, the recording will be sent out, and we hope that you can continue to join us for the future webinars. So thanks again, Becca. This was great.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay, thank you. Goodbye, everyone.